has to be very specific parameters and training on entering that data for the CDC and for the state in order to make sure that the vaccines are properly tracked.
I'm with you, but to your point, we're either going to use the CDC or not use the CDC for metrics, and so right now we suck. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is from the CDC.
But I'm just saying, but also the state of Kansas, because they have a tracking process.
I say we, the state of Kansas. It's unfortunate, but
I'm just saying, in defense of the health departments who are doing a phenomenal job of getting people
what you don't have.
Inoculated.
Well, this is nothing.
This isn't
in response to the health department. This is more in response to the leadership from the state level, and I'd like to see us get those vaccines out to the people.
Well, I'm just saying, I say that the vaccines are being provided for the people. They're getting the information back after they've been given their inoculation. It's getting that information put back into the system to report.
Well, that's the responsibility of the administration.
But I'm just saying, I want to reassure the people that the vaccines are being distributed, that people are receiving.
Frontline workers are receiving them.
Right.
But I think their numbers will go up as soon as they get all the inmates vaccinated, the general public, and then the numbers will go up. So
here.
Now there I have agreed.
So anyway, that's
you should derail the administrative business, right?
yeah,
so that's the administrative business.
better get my cuff on.
And I do think when our new commissioner comes on, and Chad, we recognize your last.
He's still got a little bit of a meeting.
He'll be back. But maybe we should have a report from our health officer.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, if there's no further administrative business, we'll move on to the consent agenda. As commissioners had a chance to look at all the items on the consent agenda, and is there anything that needs to be pulled off and voted on separately?
If not, then I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 All right. Mr. Knoll?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
So today before you we have for your consideration the acceptance of the bids for the SH30 bridge replacement project. In order to try to articulate the discrepancies within these documents, I'm going to highlight some specific areas. We did receive 3 bids. These bids range from $612,269 for Stodlinger Construction to $934,877 for Miles Construction. We did receive one mid-range bid at $858,811 from Brian Olmeyer Construction Company. So we did receive the 3 bids. The engineer's estimate that was provided prior to the bid letting by Benish was for $598,111. That bid estimate had several discrepancies that were not addressed after request by the county staff. You can see that within the bid tab summary. The bridge items were not itemized, so we are not sure necessarily which bid items they included within that scope of services. Some of their multiplication was in error on the quantities between the tonnage and the volume, where they had one line item that was supposed to have 776 lineal feet and was multiplied out by 76. And another estimate, they had 52 tons of material, 20 tons of material at $52 a ton, and the multiplications were all area. Their bid estimate also preliminary include the removal of the board is aware of the issues wide-ranging from many aspects that we had with this consultant. We did request prior to the bid opening that they update their bid quantity sheet. That estimate was not provided to us. From a historical standpoint, the engineer's estimate provided by Finish has changed. We have had, in the approved 5-year CIP that was done in May, the board considered at that point, we had an anticipated cost provided to us of $676,289. And more recently, we had a separate bid estimate from the engineer of $630,568. We've had some that have ranged lower. I have seen numbers, at least 5 different cost estimates that have varied on this project. Due to these discrepancies and their unwillingness to update the bid tab, I believe that number it could be an error. It definitely has discrepancies because we do not know what items were included in the bridge quantities because they were unwilling to break this down for us as we had requested. I would expect this relationship is going to have to continue with Finish Engineering based upon the fact that they are designing multiple other bridges. In fact, they are completely redesigning one bridge, E18 in the Easton Township. Currently, the bridge design was nearly complete, but upon further inspection by county staff, it was discovered that there was errors in their hydraulic modeling, and we have been requesting a meeting for them to address that since approximately June. It took about 5 months to get that meeting. They finally acknowledged some of the errors that we did have. And so that bridge...
It took 5 months?
Yeah, this did. And so over that period of time, we had received information and responses from them, but none that addressed the real issue. So to say that it was unexpected that we did not receive in a 3-week period updated information on this bid tab would be an exaggeration. So at this point, I would say that based upon the information that we have, it's the board's consideration that I'd say you have three choices. You can accept the bids as presented, the low bid with Dodlinger Construction, and we can request that they execute a contract. We can reject the bids based upon the fact that the engineer's estimate, albeit maybe incorrect and incomplete, is lower than the low bid that we did receive, or we can rebid the project entirely, delaying its start time. This project was allowed 90 calendar days for completion. We did provide a fairly wide range of time in which to start and which to complete the project through next summer, but we did try to narrow down, because of the traffic volume of that roadway, the length of construction to just 90 days. And so that also probably was not taken into account with the engineer's estimate that was provided.
Well,
Bill, I had a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm less concerned with the Finish estimate or inaccuracies or anything else, because ultimately I'll rely on the people that do the work every day in and day out, to maybe give us a closer bid. The bigger question I have is, I'm only familiar with one of the 3, and maybe you're incredibly familiar with the other 2. A couple of things. Why so few bids ultimately for a $500,000 project or $1 million project? And then ultimately, when you compare them, again, not speaking to Brian Olmeyer or Miles, I mean, there's a 50% difference with the group out of Wichita. Now, if the group in Wichita has decades of experience and miles of credentials and recommendations, then no offense to great for them. So it brings up a couple of things. One, why don't we see more bids, in your opinion? And then secondarily, whether they're local or not, just more bids in general, right? So adjacent, counties, anybody that's in the greater Kansas City metro. And then secondly, what is our process when we get a bid to someone could come in here for $250,000. Now, you'd quickly say, well, that's not realistic. But ultimately, the background check that we do to make sure that they're in good standing, I'm sure that we don't require, letters of recommendation or anything to that degree. But how do we know that their last 3 bridges didn't fall down? I'm obviously trying to be funny, but...
Yeah. So I can address those kind of one at a time, the multiple points you made there. So one is some of these companies are union and some of them are non-union. That could create a significant impact on pricing between Miles Construction and Dodlinger and Brian Olmeyer. And so you have that factor of counties aren't, if I'm not mistaken, allowed to require Davis-Bacon Act to be in effect for county projects. And so, therefore, we are bidding union and non-union construction companies, so that therein lies some of the pricing differences that you may see on a little bid type scenario.
I'm very familiar with the price difference between union and non-union.
Secondly, with the reduction in the spending at the state level on infrastructure over the past 10 years, there have some of these companies, such as King's Construction out of Heston. I know that Dodlinger and Brian Olmeyer, they've reduced the number of bridge crews that they currently have to 2 to 3 when they used to have 3 to 5. And so the number of crews out there and some of these construction companies, the number of employees they currently have available now that some of these projects are finally coming to construction is reduced. And so therefore you're going to see that the competition and pricing of these bridges is going to probably increase over time.
But just real quick, so the 3, I don't know, we have 3 or 5 bids on E58, none of which are represented here, nor are these.
These are 2 completely different type of bridges too. So the type of company that was going to bid E58,
We could build different types of houses. So we're saying that the companies that bid on E58 can't construct this type of bridge?
saying they typically aren't going to construct the same type of bridge. They can construct any type of bridge if they wanted to bid on the work. But
I assumed if the money was good, they would.
AM Coron specifically tries to build a lot of the pre-stressed concrete structures like the one that we have because of the size of the cranes that they own.
Okay.
And the amount of money that it takes. You can build this bridge with a much smaller crane structure. And so cost-wise, in order to be competitive, they need to probably be building the appropriate size bridge for the type of equipment that they purchase to build these bridges. So they, like AM Coron, for instance, builds a lot of bridges on the Turnpike. I know they built 3 bridges on the Turnpike last year. And so those are larger structures that have longer spans. This is a steel truss bridge, and so you can use a much smaller crane. You could probably construct some of the. You might be able to construct this with a rubber tired crane. And so a much smaller type of crane structure that would be required for this type of project.
Okay.
And so I think that therein lies part of your the type of company that has the equipment necessary to do it isn't necessarily going to bid on every project. I know that another thing that's more prevalent on SH22 that we're trying to get our permitting on is KDOT's getting ready to do some huge bridge packages and let out a lot of bridges in March and April. And so there are some bridge groups out there that they're going to construct 20 bridges all at once in the state of Kansas. And so the amount of work that's out there for the 2021 season in bridges under the new governor's release of some funds for infrastructure is significant compared to the number of workers that the state of Kansas possesses that are still building bridges. And so you're going to see a lot of competition. I know that that's one of the emphases that Finney and Turnipseed has had is we're really trying to beat that bid letting that KDOT's going to put out. And if we don't beat that bid letting, we might want to wait a month until after that and to see to let the dust settle on all their bidding practices because there's going to be a lot of competition coming in the next few months for bridges. So I think that there is a lot of work in the bridge sector right now and not the amount of labor that there used to be on a 10-year historical look back.
I have a question.
You said the union, non-union thing applies. Is that in this specific instance, With these three, do we know if these are union or non-union?
I don't believe that they are. Miles is, and I don't believe that Donwinger is. I think that they're non-union. I'm not sure.
What about the other one?
I'm not sure. I'd have to research that. I don't research that. It's not.
They've done a lot of
Okay.
bridges for the county, Omar has.
So, and I think you answered this before, if we do not let this today, this project will be delayed, in your opinion?
Well, but with that, regarding the concern of the Kansas statute, that,
And that was going to be my next question.
how do we handle that situation, if I can...
And just to be clear, the statute is if estimates come in over
Right. If they come up, then...
over the firm that we've contracted that's made numerous.
We can't
Services.
award above that, more than what percent? I mean, what is the threshold?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good morning. KSA 68-1407A states, "No contract shall be awarded thereof for a price in excess of the estimated cost." And this statute specifically deals with bridges. Again, I'll just make an editorial comment. Kansas law with respect to bridges is different than from other public projects, which do allow a 10% deviation from an estimated cost. In this case, however, as Mr. Knoll outlined to you, we actually have a range of engineering costs, approximately from $676,000 down to $598,000, and you have the low bid of approximately $612,000. I believe it would be in your discretion to determine what the estimated cost is. Of course, in this case, though, it's going to be in a range. I'm somewhat concerned with the performance of the engineering company that provided that estimate. As Mr. Knoll outlined, there's some dissatisfaction. That being stated aside, your options are, as Mr. Knoll outlined to you, you could proceed to accept the low bid, finding that it is within the range of estimated costs of the project. You could table the matter for additional study, or you could rebid the project. Commissioner Shimke does bring up a good point. In this case, you have a very wide variation in the bids. The industry goal is to have a very narrow range of bids with the presumption that you've provided adequate specifications for the project to allow for bidders to compete. That's just an observation as to one of the factors you might want to consider on which of the three options you wish to undertake.
What was that range again? What were the numbers?
598 to 69.
I believe roughly $676,000 to $598,000.
Well, we actually had one that was like 587 too. We've had so many different estimates on these projects. We've had some bridge estimates for Venice changed by as much as $140,000 over the course of the last 10 months that I've worked here. But in the approved CIP from May, we had an engineer's estimate of $676,289.
So we are, if we proceeded, we'd be complying with the statute.
I would believe you would be compliant with the spirit of 1407 and that you would be within the range of the estimated cost.
So right now, the variance between the low bid and the engineer's estimate is roughly 2%. I didn't bring a calculator, but it's pretty nominal.
Which estimate?
Well, no. I'm talking about the one that we're referencing against, right? So the engineer's estimate is 598,
Correct.
and it came in at 612.
And if you look, the
So
other
that's the difference of 14 grand. I'm rounding, but I'm calling that 2%.
Right.
Yeah, just
and you can take at least 1 or 2% in just the items that are itemized by the finish, including the gate and some of the quantity issues. You're looking at least half, if not more than half, of that 1 to 2% just in those areas.
I've seen a few gates come through here, Bill. I mean, that could be 5 to 10,000 just on its own.
Well, the last gate estimate we had for that project was 15,000.
Right.
2.3%.
So is your recommendation that we proceed?
I'm going to defer that.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, if I could ask Mr. Knoll this question. Mr. Knoll, you are a licensed engineer. Do you believe that the contract, that the low bid is in excess of the estimated cost of this project based upon the range provided by Benish?
Well, to clarify, I'm not licensed, but as project manager, I would say that it's within the range acceptable. We have had so many different varying factors and have documented errors that have not been corrected per our request, that I would say that these numbers are, the low bid would be acceptable. If they had come back and we had an $850,000 low bid of our second bidding contractor, then I would say that we would probably need to reevaluate the situation. But because we are within that 2%, I'm pretty comfortable with that amount of error.
No, I could be wrong, but it seems like the bid has changed more times than maybe the inspection services that have been provided.
The bid, what?
The engineer's estimate, right, by Benish?
Yeah, it's
Well,
changed.
I'm shocked that I figured once you get an estimate, it's kind of like on a shelf, like a lot of other plans and things that don't get completed, yet this has changed multiple times.
Because we continuously have asked them to correct things within their estimates. We're trying to develop the capital improvement plan in May. In order to have accurate numbers, we were looking at what the cost in the bridge inspections was versus what I know of as the historical KDOT numbers. We can look at KDOT bid tabs and see how much like bridges have been costing when KDOT has left them in order to see what the discrepancies were. And so when we were looking at those structures, say you apply a $95 a square foot cost to a haunch slab bridge, and you compare that back to Benish's cost estimates provided within their engineer's estimate, or their engineer's estimate that's provided as part of the bridge inspections, and you're off by a factor of 25, 30, 40, 50%, you know you've got an issue. And so we've asked them to correct this. So we had the 2018 inspections, and then you had the ones that were contracted in 2020, right before I started, and were completed and provided to us about in April.
E58 was in that 2018
So you
list,
have
right?
18, you have an 18 estimate, you have a 20 estimate,
Right.
and then you have us over the past 5 to 7 months trying to request more accurate information, and through that process, we have received multiple different cost estimates. So we have 18, 20, we have the capital improvement plan time frame, and then since then we've been trying to provide additional information.
So when you're working with the engineer and going through this process, is there typically, like, this engineer's estimate, is this typically one engineer's making this estimate, or is there a group of engineers that are working on it and then they're working with you? Or how does that process work?
Usually it's one engineer, and generally they multiply their engineer's estimate by a large enough contingency fee that there's no chance that they're ever the lowest cost estimate. So they may have provided us a true cost estimate without providing a contingency fee. They don't respond to those type of questions when we ask them, is this actual cost, or does this include a 15% contingency? Is this 2020 numbers, or are you basing this off of KDOT's? What KDOT bid lettings are you basing this information off of for your quantities?
I mean, right now, it's hard to even get steel. I mean, just as an example. I mean,
Yeah, and so I know, for instance, I had priced a bridge in Kickapoo Township, a prefab type structure that's kind of a cookie cutter bridge in the beginning of October. That bid was good for 60 days, but they have notified us that we have 15 days to accept that bid. We're not obviously going to move on it. We were just trying to get a realistic cost estimate. But the price of steel is increasing by the month, and so they said that they would not honor that price after January 31st. And so 30 to 60, 90 days is all your estimates are right now with steel prices.
So like I said, my just quick synopsis was I'm not as concerned with the engineer estimate we received. I'm more concerned with reviewing yet the bids that we did receive from what I assume to be all qualified contractors. So have we, Leavenworth County, or anybody else in the room, dealt with Don Klinger and Son?
I have not had them previously as a contractor on any of my projects. I did speak with Craig Maddox, who is the principal and owner of Finney and Turnipseed, who has had extensive experience with them, who is the inspector of this project, and he said they are a reputable company that he has worked with and probably built 20 to 30 bridges over the course.
They're well known in Wichita.
Yeah, they're a well-known company.
If it was Coke, I would have recognized it. I just thought I'd ask the group.
They're a well-known company who works all over the state of Kansas and has been around for a long period of time. We also did discuss the discrepancies in the range of pricing with him, and he felt that the low bid was probably an accurate number based upon the size of the bridge and the cost estimates. He felt that the other ones were extremely high based upon what his recent bids were in the city. I think it was in Butler County. And so he felt that the low bid was an appropriate number.
Well, I think contractors are busy and they're getting rates, and to pull off for a project that's smaller, I mean, it's got to be worth their time to do it. So I mean,
Right, and I think
that makes sense.
with the additional bridges that are getting ready to come out, people are looking more toward those bundles than they are a small project. So you're going to, if your high bid happened to be the one that you got, it'd be like a score.
Mm-hmm.
But I think probably the low bid is probably within the range of what would consider to be more reasonable.
And it's unfortunate that we didn't get responses from Benish, but, I mean, it's all well documented, your request, so. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, based upon the information provided, I think in this specific case, your estimated cost is actually a range between $598,000 and $676,000. So the low bid would not be in excess of the estimated cost based upon the fact that you were given by your professional engineers a range.
Okay.
And we need to make sure that
and
we
Steele
do
went up
not
this
to
morning.
exceed. Included a not to exceed probably for.
Bill, is it also common that you find errors in estimates that we receive, or no?
Yeah, it's been really common since.
That's unfortunate. When you pay for expertise and you have to fix that expertise,
Historically,
that's a
it's
real
not
problem.
common, but yes, we had errors on 178th Street, we've had errors on these, we've had errors in multiple projects.
Thank you and your team for catching up.
Absolutely.
We've had several errors there were some errors on E58. I mean, there has been errors in every document. I mean, you might find some errors, but yes, no, there's errors, and there has been some extensive errors that we've had to address and managed to work out without change order.
Okay, is there any other questions, Mr. Knoll?
Just the final question, Bill, because I'm taking it from everything that's been said, that you're standing by your recommendation and will for us to. If
Mr. Van Paris is comfortable with how it applies to statute 68-1407, I would say that the low bid is within an acceptable figure for the cost of the construction, notwithstanding the state statute, if he's comfortable with that aspect of it.
And again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my opinion too is based upon the fact that Benish Engineering provided you essentially a range, again, between $598,000 and $676,000. The proposed cost is within that range.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
There's no further questions of Mr. Knoll or Mr. Van Paris.
Okay, I move that we award the bid to Dodlinger Construction for SH30 bridge replacement project in an amount not to exceed $642,269.31.
Second?
What was the number?
To put the contingency in it.
Oh, okay.
It was 612, but there's a 5%.
Oh, yeah.
contingency.
I put what was in which number would be appropriate?
612 is what was open.
612 was open.
Mr. Chairman, I think the appropriate motion, Commissioner Stephen, would be to accept the lowest responsible bid.
Okay, I was just going by what was provided to me. 612, 269.31.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? By delaying this, it would cost the taxpayers a lot more money, and it's really unfair when you done open bids, and now everybody knows what everybody's bid is, so I'm sure it would not all come back the same. So, if no other further...
I don't want to see it delayed.
No, it's your area.
Well, they want to get it done because they're already planning on it being a mess. Well,
Well,
the bridge is
it
out.
is. Well, let's hope we don't get a protest on it or anything. So we got a motion second. Any further discussion? Then voting?
Aye.
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 All right.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Thanks a lot.
As always, I appreciate the education, sir.
All right. Ms. Bob, how are you today?
I am well, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Morning.
Good so far.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I have before you a request. As you all are aware, the board has directed my office to amend our sanitary code to allow septic systems on 1 acre tracts of land. We have gone through the sanitary code. We have made that amendment. We've made a couple of other amendments. For instance, we've identified areas where setbacks were not identified, such as with swimming pools and driveways and such, so we went ahead and put those in there. And then we also have a requirement that a septic tank has to have a mesh cover on it. Unfortunately, children are able to fall into those, and it has happened. So we've added that to the sanitary code. I have a form that the senior county counselor and the county commissioner are meant to sign in order for us to send this over to KDHE for them to review this and then make any recommended changes or just to accept it. That's simply what I'm here for today is approval, the board allowing us to go ahead and send that over to KDHE so we can get this process moving.
Any questions of Crystal?
Any indication how long they will process this or how long that takes?
I would say somewhere between 30 and 60 days. Kyle has worked very closely with KDHE throughout this process. They know that it's coming, but certainly we're not the only community that they work with, so I wouldn't want to tell you this will be turned around in 2 weeks and then it takes 30 days. So.
Crystal, I realize I'm the most dense of the group, but why do we have to request of KDHE what KDHE already allows?
Because we are amending our sanitary code, and they approve our sanitary code. So we can be stricter than they are, which we currently are,
That's, okay.
but we're making a change, so they have to.
So I guess the follow-up to that is why wouldn't we have the same, why wouldn't we follow their code in general? So as a general rule of thumb, if you have a subject matter expert in a particular field, why wouldn't we follow their recommendations or guidelines versus having anything that's different? So I guess the question is, by just amending this, are we now completely in line with KDHE, or do we still have further restrictions than KDHE allows?
So I will say our sanitary code was adopted, I believe, in 1994 or maybe 1996. I don't know what changes have taken place at KDHE since then.
Okay.
We are required to have our own adopted sanitary code.
Sure.
We can't just default and say, oh, we're just adopting yours. So it would be kind of an obstacle, if you will, if we were to just constantly be trying to adopt whatever the state has. I can't tell you if this is going to be perfectly in line with the state. I can tell you that the 1 acre septic system, that is in line with the state.
So this is more in line with the state.
Correct.
As far as you know, there's not counties that strictly say, hey, look, we don't employ a sanitary expert on our staff anyway, since KDHE is the subject matter expert. Let's just mirror theirs.
Every county, to my knowledge, has a sanitarian. So they all have adopted sanitary codes.
That's amazing. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions of Crystal? Thank you, Commissioner Culberson.
Nope, I'm just thinking, let's build some houses.
Okay, well,
That's one thing we can do.
okay. All right.
This will help.
All right. And I'll entertain a motion to approve case number DV-20-148, sanitary codes review.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the changing our sanitary codes? Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
That was simple and painless.
Thank you, Crystal.
I try to make it painless.
I'm just trying to figure out why I'm
Did you read
try to
this whole
outthink
thing?
with the kitty.
I just
But it's not painless. It is not painless. So,
I hear the hammer swinging now,
yeah, I hear you. Well,
every little bit.
farm the backyard, live in the front. Okay, do we have anything else for the board before we break off into our work session? There's really probably nobody has anything to report on because of the holidays.
I
Um,
participated yesterday in the Zoom meeting for the Mental Health Task Force.
Okay, and that's kind of what we're going to be jumping into this afternoon a
This
little
afternoon,
bit.
we'll be talking to some of the things that were addressed with that.
Okay. I don't believe anybody else had any meetings.
Easton City,
Oh, you had one Monday night?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I Zoomed Leavenworth last night.
At Leavenworth meeting too?
Yeah, that work
Okay.
session.
All of ours is in the week usually. We have about Monday nights. Tongue didn't have one today.
They're still zooming.
Oh,
They
they're
had
still.
one left, I think.
Did Linwood get their check, COVID relief?
I spoke to them, they said all the work has been done.
Okay,
So,
Easton picked theirs up with no problems. They're pretty happy.
I did put an article in the paper and still been explaining about
The
County
zone,
Road
yeah.
1 a lot.
I read that.
And there's still a lot of questions. People are confused about the difference in zoning and the usage and taxes and, I mean, it's confusing.
And I had a meeting with Jeff Pittman about the Eastern Gateway. I don't know if that was before last meeting or not, but that set up a meeting with Secretary Lorenz tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah,
Okay.
over the Eastern Gateway.
Okay. And then we'll be discussing legislative topics here pretty quick. So if nobody else has anything to report on, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn and go into our work session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, voting.
Aye.
Aye.